Hey, FCC fans, you could show your pride in a whole new way with the new FCC Visa debit card from First Financial Bank. First Financial is the exclusive banking partner of FCC, and they are just as committed to this club as you and I are. Not only does the card look awesome, but it also gets you discounts on FCC tickets and merch. Find out how to get yours and to see the account terms and conditions at bankatfirst.com/FC Cincinnati. First Financial Bank, member FDIC. Hey, what's happening, CSTers? Welcome to the big show here this Monday evening. Glad you're with us. Lots to get to this week. What a way to end the season for FC Cincinnati. They draw with DC United 0-0 there at Adi Field. Basically prevent DC United from hosting a playoff game. And just a bizarre sequence of events there before the end of the first half, which I'm sure we will be discussing quite a bit here this evening on the program. Of course, we're also going to be joined by the Athletics' Laurel Pfahler. She had a great article last week in regards to the grievance filed by Fanendo Adi with the Players Association. So we'll talk about what that means for Adi, what it means for FC Cincinnati. And last but not least, it wouldn't be a season wrap-up without talking about rosters, right? There's going to be some movement. So we'll talk about some roster shakeups that will be occurring here over the next few days. Of course, if you're watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, we are always monitoring your chat, so make sure you chime in and have your say this evening. All right, let's welcome in my cast of characters this week. I'll start first with the one and only Bill Wolf. Bill, how are you, sir?
I am doing well. How could we not be well after such a stupendous ending to the season? It has been a rough year, but that was fun. So it was a little ugly in the end of the first half, but we'll talk about that a little more. But yeah, it's always fun when you know the other team goes home unhappy.
Yes. I don't know if the fun was the right word I would use, but
I had fun.
Well, I'm glad to have you back on the show, Wolfman, to get your thoughts on what occurred over the weekend. Of course, I'm really excited to welcome back to the show. We were kind of talking about it before the show started, that it's been a while since he's been on the Monday program. Let's welcome in Brad Owigo. Brad, how are you, sir?
Yeah, Subes, thanks for having me back on. It's been a while. I want to say it's almost 2 months. Been pretty busy since then, but still working out with Boston on March to Match Day. But it's good to be over here on the main show with you guys. I've missed you all and excited to talk about the gutsy performance from Sunday night.
Absolutely. And last but not least, with the way FC Cincinnati defended over the weekend against DC United and the fact that they played with not as many folks as the black and red team had, we had to talk tactics and get Coach on the show, Coach Brad Goff, to tell us what exactly Ron Jans did to get out of DC with a 0-0 draw. Brad, or should I say, Coach, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, Subes, I am so happy to be here. I had a lot of excitement going on the past 2 games. Watching this midfield work together. I think Coach Ron Jans has a bit of a tactical idea and some tactical flexibility, and I'm excited to talk about it tonight.
As we should be. It was a good effort by the men in orange and blue over the weekend to come out of this with a 0-0 draw. A great way to end the year if you're a fan of FC Cincinnati. And, of course, I'm stealing a line from our good pal Brian Griffin on social media. Hashtag remember the 9. That's how this is going to go down, FC Cincinnati fans. Remember the 9 players who finished that match in DC United, or I should say in Washington, D.C., to come out with a 0-0 draw. Just let's start off with, but as the match was 11v11, Bill, it kind of felt like, okay, FC Cincinnati had some momentum and seemed like they were creating a better of the chances, had some more possession. I actually thought they were playing really well with 11 guys on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think the very, very beginning of the game, we were back on our heels a little bit. I mean, I think DC came out, obviously intent to win this game to secure their home playoff spot. And we had to weather that a little bit. So maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it was a little rough, but it definitely we got our feet underneath us. We kind of got into the rhythm of the game. We were able to start to put together some attack and some passes. And I think honestly, in the first half, we had the only actual shot on goal that was, taken. So, in some senses, we had the best chances there. But it definitely felt like a game that we could have won up to that point. So
yeah, I think one chance comes to mind, Coach. There was a corner kick that Lamar heads off the near post and was that close to going in.
Yeah, and we've been saying it all year, with the type of height and strength that FCC has, why can we not be a team that gets some more set piece goals? Maybe this was a bit of bad luck because the set looked good, a little bit of a near post flick header, and it was disappointing that it didn't go in. That goes in, it could have been a totally different match.
Yeah, so it would have been for sure. Brad, your thoughts as FC Cincinnati was going up against DC United 11v11?
Yeah, like a lot of what these guys said already. It was a slow start, but I have to give the guys credit for trying to stay in the match. It was a very tall task. You've got a team that's hungry, trying to play for that home spot, home playoff match. We had a team where we did have some talent, but again, we didn't have a striker. We were missing Amaya due to his groin injury and Cruz to suspension. So we were missing some of our big horses out there. And after we got a little comfortable after that 15 minute mark to the 40th minute mark, I would say that we were toe-to-toe with them, put in some good chances. Alashe, I thought, brought a lot of energy as he's done really over the last month of the season. I think he had a great opportunity if he just takes his time, and I think he just hit it straight at the keeper. Unfortunately, he comes to mind. I think Lamar had another opportunity, or Ledesma had another opportunity as well in about a 5-minute segment there where we had 4 shots. So I like what they're doing. I like how they were defensively sound. And you can start to see the plan that Jans has in motion going forward.
Yeah, and what's more, I saw a couple moments where FCC did something that they've been struggling to do and have looked really poor doing, where they started to build out of the back a bit, sucked the DC United forwards towards them, and then split them with some line splitting passes. And I think that's what led to Alashe's chance that Brad was talking about earlier. There was some really nice counterattacks starting from a build from the back and kind of working past the first line of pressure there. And I was really happy with that.
All right, so let's talk about the main talking point here, right, gents? I mean, this match largely dominated by 2 crazy moments there at the end of the first half. We'll start with the Joe Giao straight red card, Bill. A lot of folks, a lot of FC Cincinnati, a lot of orange and blue tinted glasses thinking it was a little soft. Probably should have been a yellow card rather than a straight red. Your thoughts on that call specifically?
I'm in agreement, and maybe I've still got my glasses on too. I mean, there is no doubt it was a foul. There's no doubt in my mind it was a reckless tackle and deserved the yellow. I just don't see the endangerment or the intent there. I mean, I think the ball was in play. I think he was going for the ball recklessly. I think if the shorts don't get torn, I'm guessing it's a yellow card. I really think that was the piece that tied it over. But, I don't know. To me, it seemed like, at that point in the game, there really hadn't been a lot of problems between those two. There wasn't anything really building there. There didn't seem to be warnings issued. And there was this one play. I mean, obviously, if there had been a really dangerous, reckless play or some sort of intent, you go straight to that red. But it seemed just a little bit over the top for me.
Brad Weigel, do you agree that if the shorts aren't torn here, he's probably looking at a yellow?
I think if the shorts aren't torn there, it doesn't give enough evidence to award the red. Like Bill said, I don't believe that there was intent at all. He was playing for the ball, but you got to be careful with those studs. You can't keep them up. We've seen players get sent off for less. Getting in there on players' ankles, bringing that boot a little high with those studs showing. So I don't blame the ref in this instance. Giao was out of control, and And I think if you're going to be out of control and you're going to have your stud showing, especially that high up an opponent's leg, you're just opening yourself and you're asking for the red card.
Coach, you were adamant from second one yesterday after the red card that you thought it was soft. I'd imagine your mind hasn't changed since then.
Not even a little bit. Now, when I say soft, I want to be clear. I don't think that was absolutely insane that it was given. It wasn't one of those where, my head is in my hands and I'm freaking out. But soft in that same thing that Bill was saying about intent, about how much danger was there really. I don't think he extended his leg in like a stabbing motion. I think he was kind of turning and almost pivoting to shield the ball. I think that he was making an attempt on the ball. And to Brad's point, sure, you got to be careful with those studs, but you got to also understand that in the game of soccer, there's going to be a little bit of an element of feet flying around. We've seen tackles. We saw a few tackles in that game that I thought were more dangerous than what Zhao did. And the referee took an awful long time to think that over as he was inspecting our friend's shorts being torn and all those things before producing that red. And I just think he decided that with the shorts torn and knowing that would have been on camera and having all the DC United players in his ear, I think he decided that that's what he had to do. I don't think it was insane. I think it was soft.
I mean, the refs, they didn't even go to VAR. The one VAR that they made the sign they went to, that was Lamar. So, I mean, looks like MLS headquarters, they saw those studs. I think anymore in today's environment with, the referees and trying to protect players, I think you show those studs. You're just asking for it.
Joe on Facebook with the line of the night so far, he says, the shorts must have been made by fanatics. Oh, that's very funny, Joe. Well played. All right, so obviously with the chaos surrounding the referee and the sending off of Joe Zhao, Roland the Rock Lamar decides to choke slam Felipe. Maybe that's an exaggeration a little bit, much like Felipe's reaction to being choked. But Lamar, initially not seen by the ref, goes to VAR, clearly hands to the throat. Easy red card here in this situation, Bill.
Yeah, just to be absolutely brutal about it, Lamar is an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think Felipe sold it. I think very little happened there. I think it was a massive flop. But you put your hand around a guy's throat, you might as well just do it and walk to the dressing room. That is a stupid thing to do. Period.
How many times have we seen this in professional sports? I mean, it's not like this is a hidden secret. You can't lose your mind, especially if you're a vet like him making as much money as he is. Like, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt here. That was just inexcusable. I gave him a 1 in my player ratings, even though I actually thought he played well up until that point. Just stupid. And now he's going to be missing, I would say a game or two to begin next season. So this isn't just going to cost us. It didn't necessarily cost us this match, but it's going to cost us going into 2020 if he sticks around.
Yep. And listen, I'm the first one to say that as a coach, I would be absolutely tearing Roland Lamar a new one. It was uncalled for. He let himself down. He let his team down. It was a terrible reaction. Also, I want to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here and say, what happened to the spirit of the game? As an official, you see the flop, you see that there was no force there. You already just gave a red card and you think, I'm not going to send 2 guys off in the same play. And again, I'm kind of just playing devil's advocate here, but I could also see a scenario where after looking at it, the referee goes and tells Lamar, I'm doing you a huge favor here and I'm letting you stay on the pitch. This shouldn't happen. And lets the game go on. Just again, that spirit of the game clause that is in the rule book that allows referees to fudge the rules a little bit here and there when it's for the good of the game at large.
I don't know that they have that luxury here. I think it's kind of like a head injury. I think the MLS is really cracking down on hands to the face. They've been fining players post game. They're really taking this serious. You do not put your hand on another player's face or neck. So I think that refs' hands were tied. I agree with you. I think in the spirit of the game and looking at the situation, it really wasn't as big a deal as Felipe wanted everybody to think it was. But it was just as a professional, it was a dumb thing to do.
Absolutely. Especially when you just had a teammate sent off, right? And
Yep.
there's cameras all over the place. It's not like you were hidden. I mean, that's why. I mean, come on, you got to be smarter than that. Already, I mean, you put your team in a tremendous hole. They're already down a guy, and now you're making it 9 men. I mean, you're right. If I'm Ron Jans, I'm absolutely ripping into him in the halftime locker room, and just I as Bill said, the stupidity. You can't do that. You just can't do that, especially with today's replay ability and the ability to go back and look. No, I mean, come on.
It's not like VAR is new. I mean, I would understand early on with VAR that some players just aren't used to having that level of, overview
Sure.
or whatever. But man, I mean, by now it's the end of the season. We've had VAR the entire season. You got it. You got to know. I mean,
one thing I can say is the mark of a team that is not screwed together correctly, whether that's players' heads, whether that's coaching, is when they repeat mistakes. And didn't we just see the a very similar scenario happen with Kekuta Mane a few games ago? If the coaching staff, if the captains on that team had done their job and explained to Mane and the team how unacceptable that was, Lamar really should have been able to think twice before doing that. So, you can't let those mistakes happen more than once.
No. So if Roland Lamar is not back with the squad next year, he might be trying out with the WWE as the newest wrestling star there on SmackDown. So again, that means for a little bit of the first half and the rest of the second half, FC Cincinnati has to play with 9 men. So hashtag remember the 9. And Coach Jans made some tactical changes there, some necessary tactical changes there in the second half, bringing on Waston to play basically a back 5 at some point. When you're down 2 guys, you're extremely limited on what you can do. So what did the FC Cincinnati the lineup do? What did the formation do to prevent DC from scoring the goal?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting here is Jan started, instead of immediately going to a back 5, he started by pulling his midfield 3 in together, keeping one player up top just to not allow the DC United center backs to completely push forward into attack. And then what he did is moved to almost like a man-to-man type of system with his 3 midfielders. It wasn't straight up man-to-man. They weren't running all over the pitch, but they were just shifting back and forth left to right instead of really operating in a triangle. And now what this allowed them to do is really funnel the ball to the outside and really try to clog up that middle. When DC United did get touches in what we call zone 14, which is just around the top of the box, there were lots of bodies around them. And you saw lots of blocked shots. You saw lots of DC United players trying to pivot and hit and pick out corners and send the ball wide because that middle was so congested. And it's really all you can do at that moment. And then as DC United started to figure out and really say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to penetrate in wide and we're going to try to really whip balls through. We put in that big center back in Kendall Waston, go 5 at the back, stretch that width a little bit and give them a new problem to solve for the last 15 minutes of the game. And with how little Ron Jans had to work with in that moment, I think that it was a masterclass in short-sighted defending.
What did you make of the 9 men, Brad? I mean, that was pretty epic.
I can't beat what Coach just did right there. I mean, that was the perfect analysis. He with what Jans did, it really looked like he shifted DC down into, from 4th gear flying around that first half down into, 2nd or 1st gear, and they had no options. They had like you're saying, they couldn't utilize their pace. They couldn't hit us on the break. I think the best thing that midfield did, and I really like Bertoni, is that they didn't shift too far in pursuit when that ball got off the field. They didn't really allow DC to have any space to hit him back on that counter, create any space or create any passing lane. So in my player ratings, I actually put Bertoni is outside of TT is my man of the match, not because he just had any tremendous stats that jumped out at you, but just because of how he kept them so organized and locked down in the midfield ahead of that back 4 and then that back 5.
And again, obviously, DC without Wayne Rooney, who has the ability to score from range, which sometimes when the box is as packed in as it is, you've got to get balls in or shots off from distance. DC United couldn't do that. And then also the fact that you could hear, and I was fortunate enough to have over the weekend DC United's broadcast. You could hear, Ben Olsen from DC United yelling, "Move it quicker!" Like telling them to get the ball, shift it from side to side a little bit faster to get FC Cincinnati's defense moving, and they just could not do it. There weren't all that many clean looks in that second half, Bill, for DC United. Although there was a couple of balls that bounced around in the 18 that were a little dangerous, and TT did have to make a save, but there weren't all that many clear-cut chances.
No, there weren't. I mean, as Coach said, the way they packed the box, there was a lot of blocked shots that went on. So, DC got a lot of shots off, and certainly they had opportunities, but with that packed in defense, even the mids dropped back and packed in. There was so many bodies in the way that so few of them actually got through to TT. I think TD only made 2 or 3 saves. I depending on, like, Foot Mob, I think said 3, and I think MLS said 2 or something. But it's regardless, he really wasn't pressed that hard to make big saves.
It really just became the Lucho Costa show for DC when they put him in.
Yeah.
It was like the whole DC attack was just standing around and seeing what Lucho could do. Without Rooney and some of the other creative guys. Quincy Amarikwa wasn't doing squat up front. So it was just really an interesting dynamic, and credit to Jans and the team for what they've really done locking down the last 5 matches.
So because of that result, Toronto leaped over DC United in the Eastern Conference standings on goal differential. They both ended the year with the same records. Toronto had a better goal differential. And when you think about how the two teams fared, Toronto had, I believe it was they scored 6 goals to our, or was it 5 goals, Bill? 5-1 versus us, and then DC was, with the 0-0 over the weekend, was 4-1. So that was the difference in those two teams in the Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, I mean, we basically, I think, gave Toronto one more goal than DC, and that's the one that went through. So for sure, at the end there, we were the big spoilers, and I'm sure DC will remember that. We'll see what their attitude is when they meet us next year.
Yeah.
You gotta love that. Sorry, you gotta love that we went to Montreal, got a win, effectively eliminating them from the playoffs, and everybody is saying, "Oh, if you can't beat FC Cincinnati, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs." And then what did we see after that? We saw Orlando City struggle to beat us at home, unable to do so. Chicago Fire unable to do so, and then DC United. I think that this is a really solid end of the season to build on going forward.
And from a momentum standpoint, Coach, playing down 2 men with all the turmoil, the fact that DC United couldn't score 1 goal against the league's worst defense, historically worst defense, right? They've given up more goals than any team in Major League Soccer history. DC still couldn't get a goal on them. I mean, that's some pretty big momentum. And I love that Pat Brennan over the weekend was tweeting that, FC Cincinnati defended better with 9 men than they have all year with 11. Talk about how this match over the weekend, the fact they came out with a clean sheet with all the adversity, how that could catapult them into next season.
Yeah, I think it can't be undersold or understated here, because I think that when you hear people talk about you, and don't kid yourself to think that the FCC players aren't hearing what's said in the media and things, whether you believe it or not, you start to internalize that criticism a bit, and you start to maybe look for things to blame. Once you have a stand like that, a stretch of games where you give up very few goals, and then a stand at the end where you're down to 9 men for over half the game and you don't give up a goal, you start to get a little bit of belief. You start to understand what it took to defend with 9 men, which is everyone has to be on point. You cannot drop your head. You can't close your eyes for a minute. You can't look the wrong direction. It requires an immense amount of communication. Go watch 5-minute stretch of that game with DC United pinging the ball around, and just look at the incredible amount of communication coming from Vanderwerf and Teton, and when Waston was in there. And then Bertoni, I agree with what Brad said about the leadership Bertoni said, directing the midfielders and keeping them tucked in tight, telling them when to press. I just think that you start to see, not only can we do it, but we have done it, and we know what it takes now. And now let's build on that going forward.
Absolutely. Well said there, Coach. Obviously, a very rough year by all accounts, right? the fact that they were able to scrape out a 0-0, keep a clean sheet, only concede 3 goals down the stretch. Jan's made some adjustments. The high press wasn't going to work. Clearly, it wasn't working. He decided to hit, sit back and hit on the counter, and it really worked out for him this year. And a positive building block to hopefully catapult them here into the 2020 season. Of course, we want to hear from you. What were your highlights? What were your best moments from this weekend's match? Get in touch with us at feedback@CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Well, we're pleased to be joined now on the Kings Hammer Hotline with Laurel Pfahler. She is from The Athletic over there covering FC Cincinnati for that fine journalistic group over there. She had a tremendous report last week. If you haven't seen it, we'll make sure we include the link to it in our show notes regarding Fanendo Adi, and she joins us now here on the Kings Hammer Hotline. Laurel, welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
It's long overdue. You've been covering the team now for 4 years. Did you ever think you'd see FC Cincinnati scrape out a 0-0 with 9 men on the field?
Definitely not. I mean, the defense definitely improved down the stretch, but I was trying to follow along while I was covering the Bengals on Sunday. So
Ooh, I don't know what's worse.
Yeah, it was decision day for them too. It felt like season's over for them as well. But I saw that they were down to 9, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? This is not going to be good. This is going to be, the ugly ending to the ugly season that it's been, and didn't turn out that way. So it was good to see them pull that out. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about
go into the off season.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Fanendo Adi, which we know and fans of the club. He's been a lightning rod, right? I mean, anytime you talk about him, everybody's got an opinion. But you had a great story last week on his situation there. So folks haven't read your article, kind of fill us in on what exactly is going on with Fanendo Adi, the club, and the union.
Okay. Yeah, basically, we had been following Adi. I go to training every week. I'm there and kind of take note of who's practicing and who's off to the rehab field and whatnot. So, I noticed he came back to training and kept asking Coach Jans about him, like, what's his status? And, oh, yeah, he's still coming back from the calf, and got to the point where, he had been training with the team for a little while. And all of a sudden it was, he's had a little setback. Well, I think that was a Thursday before the Montreal game, maybe. The next Monday, he was back training, and Coach Jans still was saying that he wasn't ready to play, and he wasn't showing up on the injury report at one point. So I kept asking about it, and it just something didn't seem right there. Just the different responses we were getting versus what we were seeing in training. So I kept requesting to speak with Fanendo at training during the media times, and a whole week went by where it just one thing happened and he wasn't available, and then the next day he was in a meeting with Coach Jans, and it just wasn't coming together. So it finally worked out after I guess it was the September 29th game, the home finale. I was able to talk with him after that game for a while, and he was quite you could tell he was very upset about some things. He didn't want to come out and say a whole lot, but as we kept talking, he started getting a little more fired up, and came out that he had taken a grievance to the Players Association. Didn't want to exactly say what it was, but he made it clear that there was something with management that just was really upsetting him, that he could see that he wasn't going to get a chance to play basically under the new management. So I kind of dug around for a while, had to check some things that he had said, spoke to everyone that I could think of, and realized more what his complaint actually was. So basically it came down to that he needed to play 8 more games than he did to get a bonus that was part of his contract. And if you look at the timing of it, he came back to training with 6 matches left. So something was off there with that too. But just talking to all the people that I did, it basically came down to that he didn't feel like he was going to get a chance to come back, even if he didn't have any injuries, that he just wasn't in the picture anymore. So basically, yeah, he took a complaint to the Players Association. I verified that with the Players Association. There was enough that they are working with him on it, but they didn't want to comment on it. So it's still a little unclear if anything's going to happen with that. So that's something to keep following up on. But it's, Gerard Nijkamp. I'm always going to say his name wrong.
We are too.
These such names. He's made it clear that he's interested in moving Adi, and that was something they looked into during the beginning of the summer transfer window when he was still healthy. And so, it's basically just now the season's over. He's on contract for next year, so there's a lot of questions as to if they're going to be able to work this out, because the way it sounds right now, he can't see him being happy in Cincinnati unless he has some serious conversations with management and feels like something's going to change. So that's kind of where things are at right now, to sum it up.
Wow, I think you've answered a lot of the questions we were going to ask you. Let's see.
Well, I could go in more depth.
It's all good.
Of the story, so I've got a lot to say.
No, it's good. You're like ahead of us. So all the next questions you're already answering. How do other players view this situation? Have you spoken to any other players? Do you think this is going to affect recruiting in any way?
Well, that was the thing that really stood out to me in working on this story. Is I talked to players, I talked to some agents, I talked to people within the club, and that was the thing that really stood out, is that the players even players that would not defend Fanendo in certain aspects, they mostly, it seems like they get along with him, but there's, some things. Adi's a big personality, and he's going to clash at times, and he speaks his mind, and some of the things he says, not everyone's going to agree with. So players that maybe don't agree with some of the things he's saying, they still had concerns about what was going on. So there was enough that if other players are concerned that he's got some kind of contract issue and that the club is treating him unfairly, I think that's the thing that really fans should take from this, is that it's not just Adi complaining about this. There's other players that are concerned, because they're looking at him as he's got this big contract and he's having this issue. What is the club going to do to me on this little contract where no one's going to really care as much about the money I'm making? Like, he's making big money. So, that's definitely, I'm guessing that's why the Players Association is concerned too, that this could be something that they want to nip in the bud. The club is still new, and management's still kind of learning the system here. So let's make sure we're all on the same page as how we're going to handle things here, and make sure that this isn't going to be an issue going forward.
Well, I think if you just look at it objectively, the players want their quote unquote money. And heading into a year where the CBA's up and there's going to be tense negotiations, it's logical to see how these players are going to, even if they like or don't like Adi, how they could possibly rally around that as a bargaining ploy, as a I don't know, just something heading into this offseason. So you can see that. But you mentioned he is under contract for 2020, and that is a big. It's a big question mark out there. How's this team going to shape itself? Will he be a part of the picture? Will he not be a part of the picture? Does the team believe in him? What do you think some of these conversations will have to be, with Adi and with the coaching staff about moving on into 2020, whether he plays a role or not?
I just don't see how it is going to work out. It's clear that they want to play a certain style, and he even said he knows he doesn't fit that style, and he's actually okay with, if that was what they were telling him, that's why he wasn't playing. or that's why if that's what they were projecting to the media, is that, he just doesn't fit our style. We want to play this way, and we feel like, Rashawn or Darren fits into that a little better. Then he would be, that's not the greatest thing, but he just didn't like that the media was being told that he was still injured or that he wasn't game fit. So I just think that if he's not going to fit into that style, though, going forward, and he already has said that he came out and said he does not respect Coach Jan as a coach. He respects him as a man, but not as a coach. So I don't see how I don't know what Ron could do differently to turn that around. And at the same time, I don't think that he's going to be willing to just say, yeah, let's mutually terminate this contract. So it's either going to take the club buying out his contract or finding a way to move him to another club.
Sorry, real quick, Coach, which, just so our fans know, the club can do that for one player. I'm not saying Lindner's going to spend $1.3 million, whatever the contract is, but that is a viable option if they really, really want to move on from him.
Yes, so they can have one buyout where it doesn't hit against
doesn't
the
affect the
cap.
Yes.
Count against, yeah.
Laurel, you mentioned that Adi knows that he didn't really fit the system, and you said in your article that Gerard Nijkamp sat down with Adi basically on day one and told him that he was surplus to requirements there. I'm wondering if you have a sense on where it went wrong with Fanendo Adi and when that decision was maybe in the early stages of being made, because clearly it had been made by the time Gerard Nijkamp put down roots in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's the thing that's a little unclear, is just where, because I'm not exactly positive if that meeting that he talks about was right when Gerard came in and was announced that he was hired, because he was there, had some team meetings. I don't know if he spoke with Fanendo at that time or if he was more referring to a later meeting. So, there were things obviously that happened this season with Fanendo with the OVI charge. I mean, there were complaints that he had made against how the team was put together. He was very vocal about the team not being set up in a way that would be successful for Fanendo to play into that system, and to have that. He wanted that number 10 that was going to feed him the ball right how he wanted it and how he is used to scoring all his goals. So I don't know if it was some of that had to come into it, because management didn't exactly want to comment on personnel issues, which is not surprising. So I wasn't able to really get a lot of their side on all this beyond what they were willing to say as far as, yeah, we're interested in moving him. And they kept saying he wasn't game fit. So, now I've lost my train of thought and forgot your question.
Just basically, if you could kind of pinpoint where it started to go wrong, which I think you kind of got to, that there's not really a great timeline that we can look at and say this is when things really started to break down, but kind of that it was rocky from the beginning and just slid downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, he portrayed it as, that first meeting, it didn't go well. Gerard said something that upset Fanendo right from the get-go, and from there, I think there'll still be more that will end up coming out. The Players Association is going to end up, if they do anything about this, I'm assuming at some point maybe they will comment, and then maybe there'll be more that'll come out on all this. But it was a difficult story to try to work on with all these different things going on with contracts. People don't like talking about those so much. So just even getting Fanendo to say that it was over a bonus, he knew that was going to probably sound bad, but I want my bonus. But he later also said that he was more concerned about the future players and other players. So I think you're right in that, and saying that with the CBA coming up, players are kind of unifying on this kind of stuff, especially now.
It should be interesting to see how this all plays out. Laurel, thank you so much for being with us here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Like I said, it was long overdue. We'll have to have you back on again here real soon.
Thanks for having me.
That's Laurel Pfahler from The Athletic. Again, I'll make sure to include a link to her article in this week's show notes, as she did a really great job of giving you all the details and breaking down this story between the club and FC Cincinnati. We appreciate her joining us on the Kings Hammer Hotline. All right, it's that time of the show where we give a big shout out and thanks to our tremendous supporters. And it's the first week of the month, which means we are going to shout out each and every one of our supporters' names. So we got to give a big shout out and thanks to Kings Hammer and Tim Bronsel, Matt Adamchick, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Teresa Everidge, Matt Imholt, Matthew Long, Joe Coling, and Tara Mullins, John Davidson, Patrick Lonnie, Dave Tangler, Alex Sierski, Claire Hughes, Carl Fight, Scott Griffith, Josh Leese, Kevin Johnston, Greg Harrell, Jack Doyle, Doug Ross, James Denbo, Tom Graybo, the Cincy Superfan. Tom, I'm thinking about you, buddy. Tim and Tina Harris, Chris Howard, Sarah Spriggs, Paul Hetker, Michael Winland, Mattis Brumback, Courtney Rice, Scott Party, Joe Collier, Richard Rolson, Christina Sharma, Nate Hale, Brandon Jones, Adam Alexander, Chima John, Mike Berryman, Andy Rosen, Joseph Wells, Gary Randolph, AJ Stork, Alec Mackey, Jamie Lay, Angela Cardwell, Anthony Zawoski, Scott Kaplan, Colin Rink, Jason DeBrewer, Robert Finley, Scott Wilson, Wesley Jackson, Dave Dorsey, Corey Finneran, Nick Roth, Austin Spiker, Brad Baker, Mitch Autry, Matt Weirman, Chris Hubbard, Michael Mutchler, Brian Homan, Troy Reinemeyer, Alex Naughton, Mark, Bill, please say it for me.
I forgot already. Annoyance Fonder. There it is.
Fonder, yes. Stephen Brashear, Mike Hudson, Brian Newton, Charney Schwartz, and Stephen Haldeman. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for your support of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We really do appreciate all that you do for the show and for the website. To learn more on how you can support the show, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. Interesting stuff there from Laurel regarding Fanendo Adi. This is from Tina Harris on Facebook. She says, #AdiOs. That's pretty good, Bill.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah. I don't see this ending well, really, for either side. Maybe it's best for just both of them to buy this thing out and get him off the books, give him a fresh start somewhere else, Brad. This really has been bad from minute one.
I mean, there's two options for FC Cincinnati: cut him or trade him. There's no way he's going to say, no, I don't need $1.3 million or whatever his guaranteed portion is. There's no way he's going to walk from that. It would be stupid. Nobody's going to give him that amount of money. FC Cincinnati knew they were overpaying him so they could get, what we thought was a high, caliber player. I still think there's quality there. Just got to use him in the right way. But there's no way he walks. So FC Cincinnati is going to have to eat some money somewhere. It just depends if they can come up with an agreement, for his services.
The problem is the trade value. I mean, I don't know what they're going to get for him, Bill.
Cap relief.
Yeah, that's what they're going to get. I mean, they're not going to be able to get, anything close to what we're paying for him. But if we could get half or, $500,000 or something, that's money that, we can still put in the bank and spend on somebody else. But yeah, it's mostly cap relief. I mean, we need to get him off the roster so we can put in a player that fits our system.
Yeah, we might have to send a team Adi and assets. You know what I'm saying? We might have to send them Adi and Tam or something just to get him off of our books. Seriously.
I mean,
he's a bad contract, and he's not a player who can single-handedly influence, a game.
But if you're going to send him and pay, wouldn't you be better off just buying out his contract?
Well, you could, but I mean, if you send him, the other team will pay for his contract, but you might have to give up Gam. Okay, but if you think about what's out there, I mean, what did Colorado give us for Kamara? Nothing. I mean, those two players, there's not a big difference between the two. So there are other options out there. That's another issue you're going to have. There are other options out there for other teams to get a scoring threat. And honestly, you've known that Fanendo Adi has this, I don't know if personality issue. I don't know if that's the right word or fair, but like he's had issues with previous coaching staffs, between Portland and now here. He's vocal. He's expensive. I think just a lot of teams nowadays, they're just not looking for a player like him. They're looking for the next great, South American player.
And the biggest thing that we have going against us is every single person knows that he is a depreciated asset at this point. Even someone looking at him and looking at his past and salivating that they could use that perfect target striker for their style of play, whipping balls into the box and letting him finish them. Even if that exists, they know that they can get him for pennies on the dollar. And if we do not just buy him out outright or cut him and just eat all of the cost, I think the best FC Cincinnati can hope for is to send him somewhere and still pay a significant portion of his salary.
I think an option, and it's going to depend if he's even open to do it, is getting out of this league and out of the country. I think Europe or something like that. That's what we're going to have to do, is to work something out with another team outside of the constraints of the Major League Soccer's budget cap structure.
But isn't it to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't it to me a no-brainer to just buy him out? I mean, I don't know what the money is, and clearly I'm the one spending Carl Leonard III money. But to me, Bill, there's all this hassle going on right now. He's not happy. The club's not happy. Just kind of be done with it and move on for both parties.
Well, I mean, obviously if you can get something for him, you should, but at the same time, we did try to shop him in the summer transfer window and it didn't happen. So,
unless they're trying to save buying somebody else out because he can only do it with one contract, but I can't see that happening.
You look at the winter transfer window, teams overseas might be looking for a forward. Some injuries happen, something.
Yeah.
I can't spend Carl Linder's money in $1.3 million right now. From what Birding and all them say, it sounds like a lot of money. So I don't think that they'll let him walk away. I think that if they can't ship him out, I think they are going to have hard conversations and just say, hey, you're a professional. We're paying you this money. Ron, you're a professional coach. Gerard, put your differences aside and go out there. So then it's going to be upon can they make something work? I mean, I think that's the third and worst case. I don't foresee that happening at all. But
no, I don't see that either.
But $1.3 million can change a lot of minds.
Yeah. We've got some great feedback here for folks watching live. David Rodrigo says, can we trade Adi to Louisville for a bottle of anything and a glazed donut? Gary Randolph says, package Adi and Powell for a Coney crate from Skyline and let's move on. Alvis Powell is an interesting one there. That kind of leads into the next segment, gents. As we saw over the last couple of days, some departures, not necessarily confirmed by the club, but confirmed by the players themselves. We saw Alvis Powell and his wife packing up their apartment there.
Good riddance.
Well, Brad, how do you really feel? Why don't you tell us? So it looks like Alvis Powell's not going to be back.
I feel like we should have cut him or traded him after the Seattle match. This is 33 extra matches too late for him to be leaving finally.
Okay.
I don't know where else to go with that.
I mean, here's the thing with Powell's another one of those guys who all of a sudden he just was completely absent. We heard a lot of talk about Jans and Nijkamp trying to figure things out, see who was going to be around for next year, and still crickets from Powell. We just didn't see him. So that leads me to believe that similar to Adi, he just was never in their plans by the time that they figured out which direction they were heading.
I mean, I don't know. You're right. I mean, it didn't work. For whatever reason, and I don't know if something was said. It couldn't all just be what he did on the field in Seattle, right? I mean, there has to have been other. I mean, yeah, that was bad. That was a bad night, sure, but come on now, two new coaches, and he still couldn't see the field.
It's another system thing. You can't pair a defender who is good going forward and not that great at defending with center backs who are not quick and can't really defend one-on-one. And their main thing is winning balls out of the air. To funnel players to the outside and force crosses, you need an outside back there to do that. Once Powell's up the field and you put Waston or Hagland or even Vanderwerf one-on-one against a winger, that's doomed to failure. So it's similar to the Adi situation. We got a guy who just did not fit what we were trying to do with the rest of our team at all.
I just have I still have nightmares of him and Eric Alexander on that wing in Seattle. It keeps me up at night, just like cold sweats.
Yeah, but I think if you want an outside back who's going to overlap with the wing and bomb forward and cross balls into the box, has some speed to get behind the defense, Powell is a decent choice. But if you're looking to possess out of the back, I think his passing is where he lacked what we looked for. I mean, he just tended to give the ball away a lot, and when we're trying to do a possession game, it's just not what we needed. So I think it just wasn't a good fit.
And absolutely, with outside backs that you're going to ask to go forward with that much pace, you need to have two things. You need to have center backs who can defend 1v1, and you need to have a number 6 who is very defensive minded, who's not getting forward into the attack and is willing to shift left or right into that gap left by the outside back. And FC Cincinnati has never had either of those.
So we know about Powell. Well, not necessarily confirmed, but the writing's on the wall there. One player that did confirm that he will not be back next year, and that is Victor Ulloa. And Brad, this is a guy who you were really high on at the beginning of the year when the FC Cincinnati made the deal to bring him in. He obviously was a homegrown player from Dallas, played a lot of minutes for Dallas, was a part of their academy system, and now here, not going to be back next year. Is that just due to the fact that there's so many defensive midfielders?
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if he's a casualty of numbers, because you've got Bertoni and Stanko, which we've heard are on contracts next season. You've got McCabe, who's become promising. So, right there, that's 3. Plus, you could even talk about if you get an attacking number 10, you could even drop Cruz into, maybe that 6 or more likely the 8 role. And then that just forces Ulloa out of the lineup and really out of the 18 with those other numbers there. I do think that he's a quality player. He is, probably your 3rd or 4th midfielder on most good MLS teams, and his salary is extremely affordable. So I don't know if FC Cincinnati's what the situation is, if he's going to be in the reentry draft, if he's going to be traded. I'm not sure what it'll look like, but I would say it was a shock to me. I don't think he's going to be the only departure out of the central midfield that we've heard so far, even though we've heard Alashe. I think several of those players are open and likely trade candidates this offseason. So we'll see, but definitely more to come out of the midfield.
And obviously, Ulloa's got some trade value too, Coach.
Yeah, I always really liked Vic. He's a great locker room presence by all accounts. Seems like a good teammate. It's a good passer of the ball. He's one of those players who does so many things well, but really isn't great at anything. The jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. We've seen him play a bit in an 8 and a 10 role, a lot in a 6 role. To me, he really fits as the number 6, who's more of the regista or the ball playing number 6, is like less of a defensive ball winner and more of a guy to move the ball from side to side. Think of like an extremely, extremely poor man's of like Andre Pirlo or something like that. More of the passer, not really a ball winner.
And of course, we're getting lots and lots of questions in here, Bill, about one man in particular. The big question everybody wants to know: do you see Pennsylvania Messi, Jimmy McLaughlin, back with the club next season?
Well, I was trying to think. Didn't we? I think we were talking about it earlier. Didn't Laurel have a comment in her article that Jimmy was going to be kind of potentially on a trial over the sort of the postseason, preseason? So I think the idea is not to deny him that opportunity. It doesn't sound like the club is just going to dump him. I mean, he never played a minute for the club, which I guess is a nice thing to do. But we'll see. It doesn't sound like they're willing to commit to him either with the new coaching staff and the new GM. So. It's fine. I mean, it seems fair. They haven't seen him play. So,
yeah, that is going to be a big question this offseason with this roster. I think we all kind of know what the situation is with Justin Hoyt. He's been not so subtle on social media about the fact that he's kind of hanging things up there here with FC Cincinnati. It looks like he's got some big plans with soccer, but maybe off the pitch. So stay tuned for that. We know that TT is under contract for next year. That's been confirmed by, I believe that was in Laurel's article. So we know he's back. We assume Richie's going to be back. We know Deplan, Waston, Vanderwerf, and Garza. Gutman is a loan for next year, so we know he's going to be back. Cruz, Amaya, Bertone, Alashe, and Stanko. Based on the fact that they've played a lot of minutes down the stretch, we're going to go ahead and assume that they're also in Jans' plans as well, Brad.
Yeah, I think those are all likely candidates. Even in the goalkeeping ranks, you'll probably see, I would assume, Jimmy Haig and Ben Lunt back. Definitely at least one of them. They've been grooming both those players. Jimmy's been on the bench for almost every match this year. Lunt spent some time before he got injured down in Louisville, so I think we're pretty set there. And then that defensive squad looks pretty sharp. I'm really interested who's going to be on, who's coming back on the offensive side. Like Joe Zhao, I think he's really our only lock. I know Mane, Ade, and Maddox are under contract, but I'd be shocked if one, let alone all three of those names were back in orange and blue next season.
One thing I can say is Kikuta Mane, all the way up until his red card, and then obviously he got injured shortly after that, he really started to impress me. Some of the things that Jans was asking him to do, dropping in between the lines, picking the ball up. Listen, I mean, the guy's never going to have a great touch. He's always going to do that thing where he puts his head down, dribbles right towards the defenders, and gets the ball tackled away. But he also has that ability to turn a game with his speed, with his ability to run at defenders, and that's a useful piece to have. He should not be an every week starter in the MLS, but he is absolutely a guy who can start some games and who can come off the bench in a role when the outside backs are already tired and just run at the defenders. And I think he impressed down the stretch personally.
Let's think about the team for next season. What, you'll probably have four wingers. Is that a pretty safe bet? Maybe five?
Yeah, I'd think.
So you've got Zhao back. I think it's extremely likely, and Lettuce says so. We're going to book it now that Etienne his option is going to be picked up to be bought from the Red Bulls. So right now, if you got Zhao and Etienne, those are two that are going to be here out of your four. I probably expect Lamar. He's played a ton under Jans, especially in this last 4 or 5 matches of the year. Probably expect him to be back. So if you're looking to really improve the squad, are you going to bring back Kikuta Mane? Yeah, he's got value. Again, probably another player with it's a trade candidate. Everybody's going to love that speed, but do you think we bring him back, or do you think we try to improve upon that position?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Personally, I'm interested to hear what Bill thinks about this, but I think if it were possible, I would look to move Lamar and keep Mane. I think they do similar roles. They have a similar skill set, and Lamar costs so much more.
Yeah, I mean, that ideally, if you're the GM, yes, but that's a prohibitive contract to take on.
Yeah, I think with Mane, I would have assumed that probably he would not be coming back, just because of what Brad was saying, just about the fact that we want to free up some space. I guess my concern is with him having this surgery and this injury. Basically, it's like a 6-month recovery. Mm-hmm. How easy is he going to be to offload?
I don't know. It's
coming back from that.
I mean, I don't know. 6 months sounds awfully long for labrum. I'm not.
Yeah, and also it's not his leg, right? So I guess you're not talking about he can't run. So yeah, it's probably true. So he could even play with it, or train with it or whatever. Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was gonna say, for me, I honestly would be okay with neither one of them coming back. Mm-hmm. Lamar is. Had some moments that have impressed me, but for being the second highest paid player on the team, he hasn't impressed me that much.
Way more.
Yeah, he hasn't impressed me that much. And if you're trying to free up some money and you're looking to bring in some difference makers, that would be a place I'd be looking. Both of them. I mean, honestly, right? Combined, they make as much as Adi, right? So somewhere in that range, anyway.
Yeah. We did get this question, and this is a great question because with the expansion draft coming up, we did see that Inter Miami has the first pick in this year's expansion draft, and then I believe Austin has might have been Nashville has the number 1 spot in the allocation order. So that's interesting. But this, obviously, with the expansion draft coming up, The question will be, who does FC Cincinnati protect? And this question from Danny on YouTube, he wants to know, are DPs automatically protected in expansion drafts?
No.
Bill says no.
Are you sure about that?
He is adamant. He shook his head right away, Brad.
I'm not sure about that.
I don't think they're automatically. They may be required to be protected, but I don't believe that they're automatically protected.
I mean, nobody's taken Adi. I mean, it's not happening. But I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to take any player from FC Cincinnati right now. It's just probably not going to happen. No matter how many players we protect.
You don't see maybe an Alvis Powell getting taken? I mean, that's one spot he could.
Maybe.
Well, the problem, though, is that means that we have to essentially re-sign him, right? Because you have to make the decision on who you release before the expansion draft. So if we don't want to keep him, we can't like hold on to him, hoping somebody takes him and then release him afterwards.
Yeah, you're right about the DPs, Bill. They're not automatically protected.
And listen, there's always hope. You know, those guys on the Three Rivers podcast or whatever out in Pittsburgh were sitting there thinking, nobody's going to take Hassan Dam. And then, look what happened. So it's always hope.
We knew that one. I mean, I think Ken Hetker had that one pretty much locked up.
But the problem, so now that I'm going back and thinking about it, Lamar was out of contract and we drafted him in the expansion draft. So he wasn't re-signed by Dallas.
No, he was not. We had to re-sign him to a new term sheet. So we took a risk there that he would walk away and go somewhere else.
Yep. So, I mean, in theory, that could happen with Powell.
It could happen with Powell, yes.
So, of course, that's a little ways away as we've got, of course, MLS Cup going on now that the playoffs are set. So we'll wrap things up with a little predictions, gents. One team. Who's going to bring home MLS Cup? I will start with you, Bill Wolf. I know you're a big fan and you watch all the MLS games you possibly can. So who's going to bring home the cup?
I think we asked this at the beginning of the year, and I had said Atlanta, and everybody thought I was full of crap. LAFC, man, they look really, really good this year.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that they wouldn't. New York on the East, looking really good. But just for the hell of it, I'm going to stick with. Oh, I shouldn't say. Sorry about that. You'll have to.
That's nothing.
Okay,
Brad
good.
Said worse.
Good. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with Atlanta and say they're going to surprise everyone.
I'm glad you mentioned LAFC. They set the record for most points in a season. Carlos Vela had 34 goals. FC Cincinnati had 31. So there you have it. It's a solid pick, though, Atlanta, defending champs. Can they go back-to-back? That's a big question.
Almost
Brad,
never happens.
You're right. It almost does never happen. How about you, Brad Weigel?
I'm taking LAFC like Bill, just purely on the selfish fact that it would be the second year in a row that a team in their second year won the title. So then that means in next year, in 2020, FC Cincinnati will be the odds-on favorite to win the title.
There you go.
We're just missing Bob Bradley and Carlos Vela. So just a little bit of work to do. I mean, in Jans we trust, but
I actually have kind of a prediction, by the way. I'm thinking this new format where the number one teams get a bye the first week, I think it's not going to help them. I think it's a bad thing.
With their first game is 22 days from now, the 29th.
Yeah, they aren't going to play for 3 weeks, right?
Yeah,
because of the break.
Little matchup though for them if the Galaxy win. I think with the Galaxy you have to go to maybe Minnesota.
Right.
And if they win, you're going to have El Trafico.
Yep.
The Galaxy traveling to LAFC. That would be a must-see team.
Absolutely. And again, LAFC is yet to beat the Galaxy, so that will be interesting, to say the least. Did you say a team, Brad? I'm sorry.
He said LAFC.
You did? Okay. All right. Coach, who you got?
I really think that LAFC is going to come up against a team that can defend and has a chance to get knocked out. And that leads me to want to pick someone else, and mostly just because I hate going chalk on these sorts of things. I would say NYCFC because they really impress me, and they do something tactically with their wing backs and playing three at the back that really presents a different challenge for people. But with this whole idea that they might not get to play at home at all because of the Yankees, it leads me to want to go somewhere else. So I am going to go out with Jim Curtin's squad and Philadelphia Union.
Whoa.
Of course, I'm never right with any of these predictions. I finished like worse than dead last in our Growler Cup, so we'll just put that out there.
It's man, that's kind of a bold one. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Philly had a great year. But yeah, that's going to be tough. And the whole stadium situation with NYCFC, that's why you need to build your own stadium, folks. Apparently they don't have to. So if I had to pick a team, man, this is tough. I'll go West, and I will say I'll go with the Sounders. They're 2 seed out in the West. A very quiet 2 seed in the West, right? I mean, the Sounders don't do anything flashy. They just get results. So I'll go with the Seattle Sounders as this year's MLS Cup champions. We want to hear from you, though. Who's going to win MLS Cup? Feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. The Omni Printing and Promotions Growler Cup wrapped up over the weekend, Bill Wolf, and it was a valiant effort to the end. It went down to the wire, but we have a champion. Fill us in.
Oh, yeah. I said it was close. I said, anyone could win, and sure enough, FCC throw their 9 players, 9 defenders on the field, and hold on for the draw and surprise almost everyone. James Denbo, the only expert in our final round to predict a draw for that last game. So he picked up 4 points. It was close at the top, so he shot up past everybody else and ended up just nudging out Claire Hughes by 1 point to take the top position. Claire comes in 1 point behind with second, followed by Matt Long, who was looking really strong at the beginning of the finals, but he lost faith in the team as they were doing lots of draws at the end. So he finished in third, but it was very close. All 3, 1 point apart, basically, between first, second, and third. 1, 2, 3, but 2 points apart, I guess. Anyway, but great job to all of them. Some incredibly surprising results, and some of these guys were able to figure it out. So congrats to James.
Yeah, congrats James Denbo on winning the Omni Printing and Promotions Growler Cup, and of course our thanks to Omni Printing and Promotions for their support of the Growler Cup all season long. It's not too late to get entered for next year's Growler Cup competition. Head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. Donate at the $5 a month level, where you can take on the geniuses, the so-called geniuses here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. It's been a lot of fun, and curious to know how everybody felt about this year's format. If you have feedback about the format, again, feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Any and all feedback is much, much appreciated. All right. We've gone a little long here tonight. Of course, a lot to get to this week. I'll start with the final thoughts from Coach Brad Goff. Coach, as always, appreciate you joining us. I know you had to rush home from a meeting. You made an effort to be on the show, and you made it an entire show with no issues. That deserves a golf clap right there. You're the man, buddy. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I'm rounding into form here right at the end of our season, just like FC Cincinnati did. I said a few episodes ago that it's time to really start to head into this offseason with some positivity and you get to be optimistic now. See the players that are coming in, the players that you wanted to see leaving. Everybody in Cincinnati can be optimistic in the offseason. The next season is always going to be the one that we pull ourselves up out of the basement, right? But in all reality, we effectively knocked Montreal out of the playoffs. We knocked James O'Connor out of a job, and we knocked DC United out of a home playoff game. So I do think that there's a lot to be excited about here in the Queen City, and I'm just excited that we have a plan moving forward and something to believe in.
Good stuff, Brad. As always, appreciate you being on the show. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned James O'Connor. He got the sack today by Orlando City. I believe he was the only coach let go today. I thought there would have been a lot more, but he was the only one let go, so he is out of a job. Not a great year for USL coaches, right? You had Alan Koch sacked earlier this year. Now James O'Connor. But Coach, as always, appreciate you being on the show. Love your tactical insight, and appreciate all you do for the show and for the website.
Happy to do it.
All right, final thoughts from Brad Weigel.
Like I said, it's been 2 months since I've been on, so I haven't gotten to personally thank everybody for coming to the foot golf event at the end of August. We raised over $2,200 for sports games for kids. It was the 4th year for doing this, so I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for that support. And also just thank you for 4 years of support of CST. It's crazy what has happened, how the time has flown by with, started with Brian, Subes, Joseph, and I, and how it's morphed, and we get more and more talented guys like the legendary Bill Wolf and our newest, but I think brightest star here in Coach Goff. Just excited to see FC Cincinnati develop, Cincinnati Soccer Talk develop, and I'm really looking forward to an off season with finally a quote unquote soccer guy in charge of building this club.
Absolutely. I echo those sentiments as well, Brad. It's going to be an exciting off season, and an off season where, obviously a lot of fans of FC Cincinnati, they've been going through a lot. They've been excited for well over a year now with everything going on. I think everybody deserves a break. Just take a break, step away, and recharge those batteries so everybody's ready to go for March. But
yeah, we're gonna need to, because I think they were saying club spokeswoman said to start expecting news soon, so it's gonna come quick.
Never ending cycle. Appreciate all that you do, buddy.
Thanks, man.
And last but not least, the Wolfman, Bill Wolf. Final thoughts?
Well, first, thanks for the kind words, Brad, and then Coach. I was actually going to bring up James O'Connor, so I've been scrambling for what my final thought would be without mentioning James O'Connor, but I'll mention him anyway, as I just did, James O'Connor.
Bill's a huge fan, if you couldn't tell.
Oh yeah. It's terrible. No, actually, it is terrible to hear, but let's not go there. Either way, my final thoughts, I guess, I'm gonna kind of follow a little bit behind Brad, talking about having some looking towards the future. I've been immensely impressed with Ron Jan so far. I feel like under Gerard, the coaching technical staff knows what they want. They have described it. They have tried to execute it. It didn't go so well. And then Ron Jan's made a decision that for the end of the year, we're going to work with the players we have. And he made some, I think, really smart technical decisions, smart coaching decisions, ground out some decent results for where we've been. And ended the season on a fairly high note in the sense of where we've been. 3 shutouts in 5 games is something to talk about when we gave up 7 goals to Minnesota earlier in the season. So I think in that sense, I'm happy to see what we get next year. I'm excited for the changes to come. Though I understand some people will be disappointed in those changes, but I think if we step back and just keep an open mind, I think we have a lot to be excited about and a bright future ahead of us. And just on top of that, I think every time I've been in the room with Ron Jans, the guy just cracks me up. He is just funny. Anyway, so it's fun to have a personality out there. I feel like he is definitely always smiling, always joking, and seems to really enjoy this job. And I think he's a breath of fresh air. So I'm looking forward to a 2020 under Coach Jans.
Yeah. Good stuff, Bill. Really well said. Hard to argue, right? His press conferences, his quotes, he has been a little bit of a breath of a fresh air. And, obviously with the way things started, trying to implement the high press, and now realizing, well, we don't have the ability to play that way. So he showed the ability to adapt, right?
Yes.
And not a lot of coaches, who just get into a job are willing to do that. It's my way or the highway. And, he adapted. So kudos to him. And you're right. It is exciting times. And even as Brad said, it's great that they're going to have a football person in place from the get-go starting next year, a clean slate. Well, not necessarily a clean slate, but you know what I mean? They'll be able to make some moves and adjustments to hopefully improve this squad.
Yeah, he is just so incredibly gutsy, though. I mean, he's sitting in a meeting and he goes after the Bengals. He goes after Rose Lavelle. I mean, it's funny, in the sense that he's willing to just basically say whatever comes into his mind, and I think that's fun. And it's all in good humor. So in the end, I think it's been wonderful.
I'm just glad there's no triangle anymore. No.
Yep.
I don't think anybody could. There was must have been the most weirdly designed triangle you've ever seen in your life.
On that note. Oh, that's funny, Brad. My final thoughts.
Trust the process.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to each one of our supporters, everybody who tunes into the live shows every Monday night, everybody who downloads and listens to this podcast each and every week. We love being a part of your week and a part of your routine. With that said, with everything that happened in 2019, from the season wrapping up in 2018 and how quickly, coverage was needed of the expansion draft, coverage was needed of the super draft and the preseason training camp and whatnot. The staff here at CST just has not had a chance to wind down and have a break. So I will say this here over the next few weeks. The podcast will be taking a much deserved break from your earbuds, your headphones, your iPods, iPhones. We need to recharge as well. And as much as we love being here each and every week, we want to take a break as well. And these guys have worked really hard this whole season, and they've deserved some time away, and let them recharge their batteries as well. So we won't be having a live show for the next couple of weeks. We'll let you know when we're back. So make sure you stay tuned to all of our social media. So that way, when you show up next Monday night, you're not wondering where we're at. We are taking some time off. So make sure you stay tuned to all of our social media and whatnot. And of course, we're thinking of ways to improve the podcast for 2020. And that might be a new format. That might be changes to the live show. Stay tuned to that. We'll see what happens. 2020 is going to be exciting, both on the field for the Orange and Blue and, of course, here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. All right, enough of my ramblings. Time to get out of here. My thanks to Laurel Pfahler from The Athletic for joining us this week to talk a little bit about the Fanendo Adi situation. And, of course, my thanks to Bill Wolf, the Wolf Man, Brad Weigel, and Coach Brad Goff. I'm Subes, reminding you to watch your tackles, and we'll see you all sometime soon.